the most important player on this team is Justin Herbert. We all know that. A simple question first. He had so many injuries last year. There was the foot, there was an ankle, there was a thigh, there was probably other stuff that we don't even know about. His health going into 2025, how's it looking right now?
Yeah, he looks good. He looks good. And I think the most important part of it is like he has to stay healthy, because he's had injuries not just last year. It's been over the last 3 years, from the fractured rib cartilage in 22 to multiple broken fingers in 2023. Justin Herbert has to be on the field and he has to be healthy. And that was a big part of last season. I don't think people have talked about a lot. You mentioned the foot. He missed 3 weeks of training camp as they're trying to learn a new offense and incorporate all of these new pieces. He had a high ankle sprain in week 2. They didn't really find their identity on offense or really open up the entire playbook until midway through the season, week 7, week 8. So he looks healthy. I think the most important thing is he has to stay healthy because he's going to take the Chargers to where they want to go more than anyone else on the roster.
No, I want to ask you about this. Like, there's the entire leadership element, which I think Justin has become really, really good at. But there's also all the outside noise that is out there of the 2 playoff appearances, the 27-0 collapse, the 4 interceptions last year. Do you sense that Justin feels any added pressure to rewrite that storybook, or he's not listening to it? It doesn't really matter to him.
Yeah, I mean, I think he probably does a good job of tuning that stuff out, but he's also a human being, right? And the reality is, and I've written about this and I've talked about this, it is going to be a narrative until he wins a playoff game. That's just the nature of the business. It's the nature of the position. It's the nature of making $52.5 million a year. And you can go look at those games and rewatch the film and dig into what actually happened and find other reasons why the Chargers lost. Obviously, defensively in that Jaguars game, they collapsed entirely. They couldn't run the football. In the Texans game, the pass protection was horrific, particularly on the interior of the offensive line. But you look at the results, and it's a collapse in Jacksonville and then 4 interceptions in Houston, one of the worst games he's played in his career. So they have to get back there. But until they get back there and until he wins, there's going to be a narrative about Justin Herbert. Some of it's warranted, some of it's not. But the truth is, he hasn't won in the playoffs, and that's just what it is at this point.
Well, aside from his health, which obviously is a big X factor, the other big X factor on this offense is probably the offensive line. You mentioned the Rashawn Slater injury. It's awful. It's hard. Joe Alt kicks over to left tackle, which was his natural position in college. You mentioned the interior of the offensive line, which might have been one of the biggest weaknesses last year, especially in pass protection. Mekhi Becton is in. He has not really practiced much. And then you have 2 of the regular guys from last year who are still likely starters of Zion Johnson and Bradley Bozeman. What is the current state of this offensive line?
Yeah, so I still have major concerns about the interior of the offensive line. As you mentioned, they're running it back with 2 of the same starters. They sort of experimented with Zion Johnson at center. He had never played there before in his NFL or college career, but he had done a little bit in the pre-draft process at the Senior Bowl. That didn't materialize. They made that decision pretty quickly into camp that they were going to stick with Zion Johnson at left guard and Bradley Bozeman at center. I mean, internally, they believe that Mekhi Becton is going to sort of raise the play of this entire interior. But obviously, he has a checkered injury history, and that was part of the reason why he only got $6 million guaranteed on the open market after a really good year with the Eagles. He comes to the Chargers and now has missed 3 weeks of practice. He was back yesterday in individual drills, but hasn't been back in team drills since July 28th. So how much he plays is going to be a big factor in how improved this offensive line is going to be. I think from a broad perspective, they sort of said, okay, we have the best tackle duo in the league in Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt. We can figure it out on the interior, and those 2 guys are going to be able to elevate any offensive lineman that we put in between them. So now that's changed. As I mentioned earlier, they do have an experienced player in Trey Pipkins sliding in at right tackle. They tried him at right guard last year, which is an entirely new position for Trey. I give him a lot of credit because he just put his head down and did his best, but it wasn't really a fit for him. His best position is tackle. Jim Harbaugh has said that. That has always been the case. So you feel like you're going to get at least replacement level play at right tackle, but it changed the calculus of this entire thing, where instead of having the best tackle duo in the league, now you're getting back towards what a lot of teams have, which is one excellent player and one sort of mid-level player. The positive spin on this is there's probably no other team in the league that could replace an all-pro left tackle with an all-pro left tackle or potential all-pro left tackle. The Chargers have that. But I think a big part of the season is going to rest on what do they get out of Mekhi Becton how much does he play? Because in reality, if Mekhi Becton misses time, they're going to be starting the exact same trio that started in that Houston game with Zion at left guard, Bradley Bozeman at center, and then Jamari Salyer at right guard. Now, with Jamari, he has lost 35 pounds. He went on a weight loss journey this offseason. They really demanded and asked of him a lot in terms of changing his diet. He looks like he's moving a lot better. So, a lot of this is how much development is there. But to me, like the player that you focus on the offensive line after the Rashawn Slater injury is Mekhi Becton. How much does he play? And what does he give them outside of the Jeff Stoutland Eagles environment and also outside of playing next to maybe the best right tackle in the history of the game in Lane Johnson?
I did want to ask you just one more thing on the offensive line. When the Slater injury happened, it was pretty immediate that Joe was going over to left tackle. Was there ever any consideration of like Joe just did an entire year of the right side, let's not mess that up, or we're just doing this change and that's it?
Yeah, when Rashawn wasn't practicing earlier in camp because of partially a blister on his foot, partially the contract negotiations, it was Joe Alt at left tackle. I go back to last year in week 18 when they played at the Raiders. Rashawn had some knee discomfort in pregame, and they'd already clinched a playoff spot, so they decided to make Rashawn inactive for that game. Joe Alt played left tackle in that game as well. So I think the strategy all along has been if Rashawn Slater's not available at left tackle, they're going to put Joe Alt there and then figure out who's the best option at right tackle. And I'll tell you this, since Rashawn went down and Joe Alt has been at left tackle, he's looked phenomenal. Like, especially as a run blocker, he's obviously a giant human being, but the way that he's able to move in space and his body control when they pull him on the outside and he can get on linebackers and defensive backs, like that feels like it's going to be an engine for the offense this year. And he looks really comfortable at that spot.